The night Daniel Carter realized he had nothing left to give, he almost didn't go. His daughter's tiny hand was wrapped around his finger, her breathing soft and uneven as she slept on the worn-out couch that doubled as their bed most nights. The apartment heater had stopped working again, and the cold crept through the thin walls like it had a right to be there. Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the email glowing on his cracked phone screen. Mandatory corporate retreat. Attendance required. He almost laughed. People like him didn't belong at corporate retreats. Not when you were barely holding onto your job as a junior analyst. Not when you counted every dollar before buying groceries. Not when your biggest worry wasn't networking, it was whether your 5-year-old daughter, Lily, would have enough to eat next week. But he couldn't afford to say no. So he gently tucked the blanket around Lily, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I'll be back before you know it, kiddo." He didn't know then that everything was about to change. The resort was the kind of place Daniel had only seen in commercials: towering glass windows, polished wood floors, fireplaces that actually worked. Everything smelled expensive. Daniel adjusted the collar of his only decent shirt, painfully aware of how out of place he looked among his coworkers. They laughed easily, carried designer bags, and talked about stock options like it was casual conversation. He stayed quiet. Invisible was safer. Until it wasn't. "There's been a mix-up with the rooms," the event coordinator announced, her voice tight with stress. "We're overbooked due to a system error. Some of you will need to share accommodations for the night." Groans filled the lobby. Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Please, not me. Daniel Carter," the coordinator called. "Of course." He stepped forward slowly. "You'll be sharing with," she checked her clipboard, then paused. Her eyes widened slightly. "With Mr. Harrison." A ripple moved through the room. Daniel blinked. "Mr. Harrison, the CEO." Silence. Every head turned toward a man standing near the fireplace, tall, composed, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Daniel's yearly rent. Ethan Harrison. The man who built the company from the ground up. The man whose decisions could change lives overnight. The man Daniel had never spoken to. Until now. Ethan looked over, his expression unreadable. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Daniel felt like he should apologize for existing. Instead, Ethan simply said, "It's fine. Let's go." The room was bigger than Daniel's entire apartment. A king-sized bed sat in the center. One bed. Daniel froze near the door. "I can sleep on the floor," he said quickly. Ethan set his coat aside. "There's no need for that." "I don't mind," Daniel insisted. "Really?" Ethan studied him for a moment, then sighed softly. "It's a large bed. We're both adults. We'll manage." Daniel nodded, though every instinct in him screamed discomfort. This was his boss. His CEO. The man who probably didn't even know his name until 10 minutes ago. And now they were supposed to share a bed. Life had a strange sense of humor. They kept to opposite sides that night, like an invisible wall divided them. The room was quiet except for the faint crackle of the fireplace. Daniel stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. His mind raced, about Lily, about work, about how easily everything could fall apart. He turned slightly, glancing at Ethan, who seemed to be asleep. Of course he was. Men like him didn't lie awake worrying about rent. Daniel closed his eyes, trying to force himself to rest. That's when he heard it. A voice. Soft. Broken. "I'm sorry." Daniel's eyes snapped open. At first, he thought he imagined it. But then, "I should have been there, Ethan." The words were barely above a whisper, like they were meant for someone who wasn't there anymore. Daniel stayed still, unsure if he should move, unsure if he should listen. But he couldn't stop. "I didn't know, I thought there'd be more time." The silence that followed felt heavy. And then, a quiet, almost imperceptible sound. Like someone trying not to cry. Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't the man from the boardroom. This wasn't the untouchable CEO everyone admired or feared. This was someone hurting. Deeply. Daniel hesitated, then spoke before he could stop himself. "Hey." The words hung in the air. Ethan went still. For a moment, Daniel thought he'd crossed a line he couldn't come back from. Then Ethan exhaled slowly. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't," Daniel said gently. "I just heard you." Another pause. "I lost my son," Ethan said finally, his voice flat, but underneath it, something fragile trembled. 2 years ago. Daniel felt like the air had been knocked out of him. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Ethan let out a hollow laugh. Everyone says that. Daniel didn't respond right away. He knew that feeling. The words that were meant to comfort but never quite reached where the pain lived. How old? Daniel asked softly. 6. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Lily was 5. I missed his last recital, Ethan continued. I was closing a deal. I told myself it mattered. That I was doing it for him. His voice cracked slightly. He got sick a week later. I never got another chance. The room felt unbearably still. I built all of this, Ethan said, gesturing vaguely to the world outside the room. And none of it mattered when it counted. Daniel swallowed hard. He thought of Lily. Of the times he almost stayed late at work. Of the sacrifices he justified because he had no choice. But what if one day? He shook the thought away. You still talk to him, Daniel said quietly. Ethan was silent for a long moment. Every night. That means he mattered, Daniel said. And it means you still do. Ethan didn't respond. But the silence felt different now. Less heavy. Less alone. After a while, Ethan spoke again. You have kids. Daniel hesitated. A daughter. Lily. How old? 5. Ethan let out a soft breath. Don't miss anything. I won't, Daniel said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty of life. And for the first time that night, they both slept. The next morning, everything looked the same. But it wasn't. At breakfast, Ethan was back to being the CEO, composed, distant, unreadable. Daniel expected the night to be forgotten. Buried. But as he turned to leave, Ethan's voice stopped him. Daniel. He turned. Ethan stepped closer. Thank you. It wasn't loud. It wasn't grand. But it was real. Weeks passed. Daniel returned to his routine. Long hours, tight budgets, quiet struggles. But something had shifted. One afternoon, he was called into a meeting. His stomach dropped. Meetings like this rarely meant good news. He stepped into the office, and froze. Ethan was there. Sit down, Daniel, he said. Daniel did, bracing himself. I've been reviewing employee files, Ethan began. Performance, background, personal circumstances. Daniel's pulse quickened. I noticed something, Ethan continued. You've turned down overtime repeatedly. Daniel hesitated. I have childcare responsibilities. Your daughter. Yes. Ethan nodded slowly. You prioritize her. Daniel wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a criticism. I used to think success required sacrifice, Ethan said. That giving everything to work was the only way to build something meaningful. He paused. I was wrong. Daniel looked up, surprised. I'm implementing changes, Ethan continued. Flexible schedules. Family support programs. No one should have to choose between their job and their child. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. And you, Ethan added, are being promoted. Daniel blinked. What? You're capable, Ethan said simply. And you remind me of what actually matters. Daniel didn't know what to say. Thank you, he managed. Ethan nodded. Just, don't forget what we talked about. I won't. That night, Daniel sat beside Lily, helping her tune her tiny, second-hand guitar. Play it again, Daddy, she said, smiling. Daniel strummed a soft chord, laughter filling the small apartment. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel so heavy. Because sometimes, the most unexpected moments, the ones that seem uncomfortable, inconvenient, even unfair, are the ones that remind us who we are. And more importantly, who we still have the chance to be.